Our gospel reading for this morning is the second of two accounts told in Luke of Jesus visiting the temple. He has been taken there for his dedication shortly after his birth, where his family meets several people who rejoice at having seen God's fulfillment of the promises made to Israel. And then the very next story we hear is this one. Listen for what the Spirit may speak to us through these words. Now, every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up as usual for the festival. When the festival was ended and they started to return, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but his parents did not know it. Assuming that he was in the group of travelers, they went a day's journey. Then they started to look for him among their relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem to search for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Look, your father and I have been searching for you in great anxiety." He said to them, "Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" But they did not understand what he said to them. Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was obedient to them. His mother treasured all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in years, and in divine and human favor. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I'm really not sure what prompted me to stick song lyrics into sermons 2 weeks in a row, but whatever the reason, as I was studying the passage from Luke we just heard, a Christmas song popped into my head, or at least a line from a Christmas song. It was a song I had heard a lot on the radio growing up as a child, but I actually knew very few of the words to the song. I had to go online and look it up. And it was there that I discovered that I'm not sure it really originally was a Christmas song. It was from the musical Mame. And the opening chorus of the song says, "For we need a little Christmas right this very minute. Candles in the windows, carols at the spinet. And we need a little Christmas right this very minute. It hasn't even snowed a flurry, but Santa dear, we're in a hurry." And the song concludes with a variation on that chorus. For we need a little music, need a little laughter, need a little singing, ringing through the rafter. And we need a little snappy, happy ever after. Need a little Christmas now. And looking at all the terrible things that have happened in the world of late, surely there were lots of folks that felt like they could use a little Christmas this year. Candles and music, laughter, and wouldn't a little happy ever after be grand? Surely everyone would love a little Christmas, but not too much. A little Christmas will do for most of us, which is perhaps a reason why Luke tells the story we just heard. A story meant as a reminder of what the birth of Jesus is actually all about. You know, when you think about it, it's quite amazing how little we know about Jesus other than the last years of his life. Mark and John's gospel make no mention of Jesus' birth or childhood. Matthew and Luke tell brief stories about or connected to the birth of Jesus, and Luke alone contains a single story about a 12-year-old Jesus, one in which Jesus utters 2 short sentences. Now, Christians have been curious about Jesus' childhood from the very beginning. There are actually writings that purport to tell of Jesus the boy that were written in the very early days of the church in those first centuries. But when the New Testament was formed, when the Bible took on its official standing, those stories were discarded. Those gospels that had them were discarded, and with good reason. They had fanciful tales of Jesus animating clay animals, Jesus causing the death of a playmate who bothered him, even one of Jesus raising from the dead a playmate so the playmate could testify that Jesus wasn't the one that pushed him to his death. These stories were written by people of faith who imagined what Jesus must have been like, sometimes in rather absurd fashion. But Luke's not up to that at all. No one knows where Luke heard this story that he tells us, but he clearly uses it to connect Jesus to Israel and to its covenant with God. In the story, we continue allusions to Old Testament, to the Old Testament hero Samuel that began with Mary's Magnificat, a song quite similar to the song sung by Hannah, Samuel's mother. Luke isn't here trying to fill out Jesus' biography for us like some of those other writers. Instead, he is pointing us towards who is this Jesus? Who is Jesus, and what will his ministry be about? From the very start, Luke lets us know that Jesus comes at God's initiative, and that he is not a typical child. Yes, he is human, but he is also in some way divine, and we see that echoed in our story today. Jesus possesses remarkable wisdom and wows the scholars at the temple in Jerusalem, and yet Jesus also grows in wisdom and in years, just like everybody else. Now, today's story is interesting in its own right, a kind of inverted version of Home Alone, where Jesus gets left at the destination of the trip rather than back at home. It's an understandable mistake, considering the way they were traveling in an extended family and community of folks on this journey together. But the crux of the story happens when the parents finally locate Jesus back at the temple as he is wowing those religious scholars. Mom acts as we might expect a mom would act. She is upset at Jesus for having caused them such heartache and pain. But Jesus' reply is rather curious. Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? Jesus' words sound absurd, It's quite clear his parents had no idea where he was or that he must be in his father's house. And he returns home with them afterward and is obedient to them, we are told, which I assume means he didn't disappear off to the temple again. Luke is not here telling us information. It'd be tempting, I think, for modern people to start to speculate on Jesus as surly preteen. But that's not what Luke's about at all. Luke is not giving us any information about the psychological makeup of the young Jesus. Luke is letting us know that for Jesus and for his followers, being about the work of God, being a part of the family of God, is going to be a problem for all other loyalties and relationships, even those of biological family. As Jesus himself, the adult Jesus, will say later on in Luke's gospel, "Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself, cannot be my disciple." Now, in the prophetic hyperbole that Jesus is employing here, hate means something akin to love less. But it is still a stark demand. Following Jesus must supersede every other loyalty, even that to our own well-being. No wonder most of us can do with just a little Christmas. But it would be a mistake to hear these words as nothing more than harsh, even impossible demand. After all, in Luke's gospel, Jesus is forever going on about the love and mercy of God, who runs to greet the prodigal, who risks everything to find the one lost sheep. This call to reorient ourselves is about something more. It is about becoming like God, who in Christ is willing to die even for those who hate him. Angels sing their glorias at Jesus' birth, not because a tribal God has done something to help the members of the tribe, but because God has acted as never before, crossing all boundaries and loyalties in love for all the world. And when, by the power of the Spirit, we are joined to Christ in the waters of baptism, we become a part of this love that reaches out to all. We are created anew, formed to reach out across boundaries and loyalties to show God's love to the world. Christ is born, and no one told the upstanding members of his religious family. Only dirty ruffian shepherds got invited. And then a little later, some foreigners from the wrong religious family came and brought their gifts. Something new and wonderful and different had begun. And we are invited to become a part of it. Thanks be to God.